Living Buddha is a very interesting person. He never has the air of a great monk nor a cold face, and he is very naive. Often when people are not paying attention, he will show off his abilities and perform a little bit of something that is close to a magical ability game, like a magic trick, which makes people feel unfathomable after watching. If you were serious about asking him to show his magical abilities, he said again with a serious face. What magical abilities do I have? I only know how to eat and sleep, poop and pee, sleep when I'm full, and eat when I wake up. If people say I have magical abilities, it means I will eat sweet and fragrant things and poop out stinky and dirty things, which is my magical ability. People laughed and said, everyone has this kind of magical ability. He also laughed and said, if everyone has it, why should you watch mine? He often playfully responded this way. I remember one day when we were living in whose house, we enjoyed the shade in the garden, and a bumblebee was flying in front of us. The living Buddha, like a child, stretched out his finger and pointed at the flying bumblebee and said, Disciple, you are too busy and work so hard, just rest here for a while. I saw the bee truly fell on his finger, and the living Buddha spoke 3 refuges to it and caressed his body with his fingers. Strange enough. The bee was very tame, crawling on his fingers, and licked the living Buddha's fingers with his mouth. He looked very intimate and flew away after a while. Another time, the living Buddha played an interesting trick. One day, Layman Wang invited the living Buddha to his house for offerings. They held a birthday party for someone in the Wang family and invited many guests. Most of them are disciples of the living Buddhas, and the food is very delicious. I and people of the Hoof family were also invited to accompany. When the banquet began, the living Buddha saw the dishes on the table and said with a smile, It's rare for me to eat such good dishes. Today I will let go of my belly and eat a full meal. Everyone laughed on hearing that. That day, he was very disciplined at the table. He didn't pinch his nose or spit. He didn't even speak but sat there holding the bowl, burying his head and eating. His female disciples saw how delicious he was eating, so they kept serving him dishes and meals. After he ate a bowl, someone served him another bowl, you served a bowl, I served a bowl, everyone was rushing to serve him rice. Some said, You ate his rice, I am also your disciple, and you should also eat my rice. The living Buddha said with a smile, Eat, I will eat it when it is served, no matter who served. After he said the words, which caused a commotion, some began to stack bowls of rice in front of the living Buddha. They stacked rice bowls on top of the lower ones, like a bowl pagoda. Living Buddha lowered his head, only focused on eating without uttering a word. After a while, astonishingly, he ate the whole stack of rice. At the end, Miss Wang served another big bowl of noodles, and he ate it up too. Some was mischievous and wanted to add more rice to the living Buddha, but Layman Wang stopped him and said, Living Buddha, you have eaten too much today and shouldn't eat any more. If you eat and get any problem, we are guilty. Living Buddha smiled and said, Since you say I eat too much, I will not eat. I counted it on the side. He ate a total of 18 bowls of rice plus a bowl of noodles. If you pour those out, it will probably fill a large basin. When we returned after dinner, I asked him with a smile, Living Buddha, why did you eat so much food today? Your belly does not look swollen. Where did the food go? He just looked at me with a smirk, and when he finished smirking, he replied, Master is a person who learns to teach Dharma and often say, it doesn't come or go, it doesn't increase or decrease. What does this mean? I said, What do you mean by that? He said, What do you mean by asking me to eat too much? On hearing his words, I laughed, and he laughed too. I think, this must be the magic trick of the living Buddha. A person, no matter how big his food intake is, can never eat 18 bowls of rice plus 1 bowl of noodles, unless the figure in the novel has such a big belly. After the living Buddha arrived in Myanmar, he also revealed his skill and played magic tricks several times. When he first arrived in Myanmar, he lived in a Chinese temple under the Shui Dagon Pagoda, Longwa Temple. Myanmar has a hot climate. People living in Myanmar have to take a cold shower every day. One day, the living Buddha was standing by the well in the monastery to take a cold shower. He put his pants on the well, and suddenly a gust of wind blew his pants down into the well. The masters who lived with him at the time helped him fish for a long time, but they failed to pick it up. Living Buddha usually only had a set of clothes and pants with him, and he never had any spare. An old cultivator, who he lived with, saw he lost pants and then donated pants to him. He received the pants and said, "You don't need to give me these pants, just lend them to me temporarily. The pants I have in the well will climb up by themselves after taking a bath in a day or two." Everyone thought he was joking. The pants fell to the bottom of the well and couldn't be salvaged. Is there a reason why the pants would float by themselves? Strange enough, 2 days later, someone fetched water from the well. Unexpectedly, living Buddha's pants were wrapped around the rope and pulled up. Everyone was pleasantly surprised, but they couldn't figure it out. They all suspected it was a magic trick played by the living Buddha. There is another mystical thing. It turns out that when it rains in Myanmar, scorpions crawl out everywhere. The scorpions in Myanmar are jet black, powerful, and 2 or 3 inches long. This scorpion is very poisonous. If it accidentally bites people, that will be so painful and life-threatening. One day, the masters who lived in Longhua Temple found a big scorpion and cried out in alarm. When people heard there was a scorpion, they all panicked. And they were afraid to mention it. When the living Buddha heard that there was a scorpion, he immediately shouted, "Don't hit it, let me deal with it." He hasted to go out, came to the side of the scorpion, stretched out his big hand, like pulling a vegetable root, picked up the scorpion with 2 fingers, put it in his slap, and said to the scorpion, "Disciple, don't be afraid, I'll give you refuge. Take refuge in the Buddha, take refuge in the Dharma, and take refuge in the Sangha." Then his mouth grunted for a while, strange. The scorpion quietly stayed in his palm. Then, the living Buddha took the scorpion out and sent it to the grass for release, while saying to the scorpion, "Don't let people see you again. If people see you, your life will be hard to survive." He was like chatting with somebody. This incident is also incomprehensible. The scorpion has the most hatred. If someone touches it, it will either use pliers to clamp you or sting you with a needle on its tail. Why did it not resist when the living Buddha pinched it with his fingers? Why did it not sting him when being put in the palm? In addition, it was tame and immovable. It's clearly due to the magical ability of the living Buddha. According to Chen, a Yangon disciple of the living Buddha, once, they built a small pagoda on the Golden Pagoda. The living Buddha asked 2 Burmese workers for water. The workers were disgusted when they saw him eating the unclean things. They deliberately played pranks on him, pointing to 2 kerosene barrels full of lime water on the ground, and said, "No clean water but only this, you can drink it if you want." The living Buddha stared at the lime water for a long time without saying a word. After a while, he said to the Burmese workers, "If you want me to drink this, I will drink a bucket. It's not satisfactory if I have not enough." The worker thought he was joking. Is it possible for a person to drink lime water? Wouldn't that burn his intestines? The worker smiled and replied, "You are welcome to drink that bucket, just drink it." The living Buddha picked up the bucket and drank all the lime water in one breath. The Burmese worker saw that he could drink a bucket of lime water, so he pointed to another bucket and said, "Can you also finish that bucket?" The living Buddha smiled and replied, "Of course, I can drink it." He picked up another bucket and drank it cleanly. When the 2 Burmese workers saw it, they stuck out their tongues and were amazed. They thought that he would die after drinking 2 buckets of lime water. Fearing they were in trouble, they ran down the tower in terror. The next day, when they returned to the pagoda to work, they saw that the living Buddha was still worshipping Buddha on the stone slab, and he was neither dead nor sick. They thought this Chinese monk must not be a human being but an errant. They hurriedly crawled on the ground and prostrated themselves to the living Buddha for repentance. Undoubtedly, this is another divine ability. Ordinary people can't even drink a sip of lime water, but the living Buddha can actually drink it. And he drank 2 buckets, a total of 10 gallons. After drinking into the belly, he was just fine and has nothing wrong. That was a deliberate trick played by the living Buddha. When the living Buddha lived on the Shwedagon Pagoda, as usual, as soon as the lamp was lit, he officially sang the Buddha's name aloud, whoever recites Namo Amitabha Buddha. There are 4 Buddhist halls on the pagoda, east, west, north and south. He sometimes sang 2 phrases of Buddha at the east gate and then ran to the south gate and sang another 2. After singing the Buddha's name, he prostrated on the ground to worship Buddha a few times. Thus, he sang and prostrated around the golden pagoda till dawn. The sound of the living Buddha singing and reciting the Buddha's name is gorgeous, and the high-pitched voice contains sadness and solemnity. He has practiced on the Shwedagon Pagoda for 5 years. The Burmese who lived on the pagoda were so joyful to hear him sing Buddha. Especially the girls selling flowers, they also often learned to hum. The sound of his singing and reciting the Buddha's name can not only move people but also move animals. The crows and dogs on the pagoda would naturally run to him on hearing his voice singing of the Buddha. That kind of scene, after a long time, is not surprising. Once, at night, the living Buddha was sitting in the Buddha hall on the pagoda and singing Buddha. Suddenly a large group of dogs came and surrounded the living Buddha. Strange enough, those dogs were crawling in front of the living Buddha in groups and silently, as if they are worshipping. At that time, people on the tower saw the strange scene and cried out in unison. They were astonished. Looking closely, there are as many as 200 or 300 dogs crawling on the ground. People had no idea where those dogs came from. After a while, the living Buddha raised his hand and spoke to the dog. If you take refuge in the Buddha, you will not fall into hell. If you take refuge in the Dharma, you will not fall into hungry ghosts. If you take refuge in the Sangha, you will not fall into animals. As his mouth grunted for a while, instantly, those dogs were gone. People don't know where they went and thought it was a great miracle, and it was rumored for a while. So far, most monks and lay Buddhist disciples in Yangon still remember this incident. In my opinion, it is another magical trick of the living Buddha.